You are not reading this sentence in the present moment. By the time these words reach your awareness, the moment they existed has already passed. Everything you have ever experienced arrived late. Not years late, not days late, fractions of a second late. But that fraction changes everything you think you know about being here right now. Here is what is actually happening inside your head as you read this. Light strikes your eye and triggers electrical signals. Those signals travel inward toward the brain. Your visual regions process shape, contrast, and pattern. Other regions decode meaning from those shapes. And only after all of that work finishes, does something you might call awareness receive the result. The entire process takes roughly 1/10 of a second, 100 milliseconds. In the time it takes to experience one moment, that moment is already gone. Now here is the part that should slow you down. This delay is completely invisible to you. You have never once noticed it. And the reason you have never noticed it is perhaps the strangest part of the story. Your brain hides the delay automatically, constantly, and with remarkable precision. The brain does not deliver experience the way a recording device captures footage. It edits, it smooths, it adjusts, it constructs a finished version of reality and presents it to your awareness as though it arrived live. When scientists began studying how the brain handles time, they expected a relatively simple picture. Signal arrives, brain processes, awareness follows. What they found instead was deeply surprising. Awareness does not follow the signal in any straightforward sequence. In some cases, the brain appears to backdate experience, reporting something happened slightly earlier than it actually did. The present moment, researchers began to realize, is not something you simply inhabit. It is something your brain assembles after the fact and delivers stamped with a false timestamp reading now. To understand how deep this goes, consider an experiment by neuroscientist Benjamin Libet in the 1980s. Libet asked volunteers to flex their wrist whenever they felt like it. While they did this, he measured electrical activity in the brain and asked them to note exactly when they felt the urge to move. The results were deeply unexpected. The brain showed measurable electrical preparation for movement roughly 550 milliseconds before the motion happened. But volunteers reported becoming consciously aware of their intention only about 200 milliseconds before the motion. There was a gap of around 350 milliseconds in which the brain had already begun preparing the action before the person was aware of deciding anything. The brain initiated first. Conscious awareness arrived second. Scientists have debated the meaning of this for decades. Some saw it as evidence against free will. If the decision happens before you know about it, who is deciding? Others argued that awareness might still shape or cancel the action, even without initiating it. But nearly everyone agreed on one thing. The timing of your conscious experience is not the same as the timing of the events producing it. Your awareness is always downstream from what is actually happening. But the delay story goes deeper still. Your brain is not processing one stream of information. It is processing several at once. Right now, it is separately handling what you see, what you hear, what you feel, and dozens of other inputs simultaneously. Each of those streams has a different processing speed. If the brain delivered each one the moment it finished, reality would feel completely fragmented. Sound would arrive at a different moment than sight. A friend speaking to you would feel like a film where the voice and lips were out of sync. But that is not what you experience. It feels seamless. It feels unified. It feels like one single moment. And that is because your brain deliberately waits. It holds all the incoming streams, waits for the slowest one to finish, and then releases them together as one coherent experience. Neuroscientists call this temporal binding. The brain is not a passive receiver of reality. It is an active editor, assembling separate streams into a single synchronized package that feels like now. The now you experience has already been built in a room you were never allowed to enter. A condition called chronostasis reveals this editing process in a vivid and familiar way. When you quickly move your eyes from one point to another, your visual system briefly suppresses the blurred motion that would otherwise appear. It then takes the first stable image after the movement and stretches it slightly backward in time. The most familiar version of this is the stopped clock illusion. You glance at a clock, and the second hand appears to freeze for a moment before beginning to move again. What you are experiencing is your brain inserting a post-movement image backward in time to cover the gap. It is quietly rewriting the order of events so your experience feels continuous. No edit marks, no visible seam, just seamless, confident, quietly fabricated now. If the brain is willing to rewrite the order of events to preserve continuity, a deeper question emerges. How much of your seamless experience of reality is stitching you simply cannot see? Researchers studying how the brain unifies separate streams into one coherent experience have not reached a final answer. Some theories suggest consciousness acts like a central broadcaster, releasing a unified experience to the whole brain simultaneously. Others suggest there is no single fixed moment of conscious experience at all, but rather a continuous rolling process of integration. What most agree on is this: the unified coherent moment you call the present is not a direct window onto the world. It is a construction, a story the brain tells itself and then tells you about what is happening right now. The Buddhist philosophical tradition reached a similar conclusion thousands of years before brain imaging existed. The present moment, some traditions argued, is not a place you can land. The moment you try to grasp it, it is already gone. What you experience as the present is always the past wearing a convincing mask. Neuroscience has now given that ancient intuition a mechanism. The mask is temporal binding. The stitching is sensory suppression. The fabrication is prediction. The delay is 100 milliseconds. But perhaps the most interesting implication is not about perception. It is about identity. Every memory you carry, every story you tell yourself about who you are, every sense of a continuous self moving through time, is built from these same delayed, edited, predicted, assembled moments. You have never lived in any moment exactly as it was happening. You have only ever lived in the version your brain prepared and delivered to you. Which raises one final question, quietly. If your brain has been constructing the present your entire life, editing it, smoothing it, predicting it, presenting it as reality, and you have never once noticed, what else has it been quietly deciding you should see?